Welcome to Voice of Mama Africa. Today we bring you a captivating African tale filled with suspense, drama, and ancient rituals. The Serpent'S Dance, a chronicle of the snake worship rituals, will take you on an emotional journey through forgiveness, redemption, and the battle for true leadership. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an exciting story like this one. The Sacred Forest of Nobi. The sacred forest of Nobi had long been the site of ancient rituals, hidden from the eyes of the unworthy. Tonight the chosen ones would bear witness to the Ogu Eke, the dance of the serpent. It was a ritual passed down from the ancestors, and now young Chidi must prove himself worthy to the gods. His mother Nena stood by his side, her presence a symbol of strength, though her heart was heavy with worry. Nena glances at Chidi with concern, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Nena, softly. Chidi, my son, are you certain you are ready for this? The gods do not take kindly to doubt. Chidi exhales deeply, his eyes never leaving the path ahead. Chidi, resolutely. I am ready, Mama. I have trained for this day. The spirit of the serpent will guide me. Nena's face tightens as she lowers her gaze. Nena, murmuring, it is not just the gods you must face. There are forces within this village that wish to see you fail. Chidi clenches his fists, his expression hardening. Chidi, defiantly, I will not fail. I cannot. The honor of our family rests on my shoulders. Nena's lips tighten, but she nods slowly, her fingers tightening around her staff. Together, they walk deeper into the forest, the shadows growing longer, the sound of drums growing louder. The ritual grounds. The clearing buzzed with anticipation. The villagers, each bound by tradition, watched in silent awe. At the center stood Ijoma, the high priestess of the serpent. She was a formidable figure, her reputation for communing with the gods unmatched. Her eyes fixed on Chidi as he approached the altar, a small smirk tugging at the corners of her lips. She knew what was at stake, more than just the ritual. Ijoma's voice rings out across the clearing, strong and commanding. Ijoma, young Chidi, step forward. The time has come to prove your worth before Ike, the spirit of the serpent. Do you carry the strength of your ancestors? Chidi steps forward, his posture firm though his hands tremble slightly. He glances at the massive serpent, his breath catching in his throat. Chidi, nervously, I do. I carry their strength, and I seek their guidance tonight. Ijoma narrows her eyes, her voice dropping to a near whisper, audible only to those closest to the altar. Ijoma, mocking, let us hope, young one, that your spirit is as strong as your words. Nena steps closer to Chidi, her hand resting briefly on his back, offering silent support. Nena, whispering, ignore her. You are stronger than she knows. Chidi nods, though his gaze flickers toward Ijoma with uncertainty. The dance begins. The drums beat faster, matching the rhythm of Chidi's movements. Every step, every sway was a challenge, a test of his resolve. The serpent watched, its eyes reflecting the fire that burned in the hearts of the villagers. But beneath the surface, a storm brewed. Nena could feel it, the weight of unseen eyes, the whispers of betrayal. Nena, watching Chidi, whispers to herself. Nena, whispering, spirits of the ancestors, guide him, protect him from the dangers that lurk, not just in the shadows of the forest, but in the hearts of those who stand here. Suddenly, Ijoma's voice breaks through the air, sharp and filled with authority. Ijoma, enough! The drums stop abruptly. Chidi freezes mid-dance, his body trembling from the sudden halt. He looks up at Ijoma, confusion clouding his eyes. Chidi, breathlessly, have I done something wrong? Ijoma steps forward, her gaze cold as she circles him like a predator sizing up its prey. Ijoma, coldly, you have done well, but there is more to this ritual than mere dance, boy. The serpent has yet to accept you. Chidi swallows hard, his eyes darting toward the serpent, which now moves, uncoiling itself and slithering toward the altar. Chidi, anxiously, what must I do? Ijoma smiles, but it is not a comforting one. Ijoma, only the serpent knows. The villagers gasp, the tension thick in the air. Nena's hand tightens on her staff, her knuckles white. Nena, whispering, be careful, my son. The gods are watching closely. The serpent's test. The silence that followed Ijoma's words was palpable, the tension in the air as thick as the smoke from the torches. Chidi stood still as the serpent slithered closer, each movement slow and deliberate. His heart pounded in his chest, and his hands trembled at his sides. He knew that this was the moment of truth, the moment that would determine whether he would be accepted by the gods or whether the serpent would strike him down. Chidi breathes heavily, his eyes fixed on the approaching serpent. He takes a step back, but stops, his body trembling. Chidi, muttering to himself, I can do this. I must. The serpent rises slightly, its head level with Chidi's chest. It stares at him, unblinking, its tongue flicking in and out. Chidi's breath catches in his throat. Ijoma, commanding, do not move, boy. Let the serpent decide your fate. Chidi clenches his fists, trying to calm the fear rising inside him. The serpent draws closer, its head inches from his chest. Nena watches with bated breath, her fingers gripping the staff so tightly that her knuckles turn white. Nena, whispering, spirits, protect him. The serpent moves again, this time circling Chidi, its body brushing lightly against his legs. Chidi stands still, though every instinct in his body screams at him to run. He closes his eyes, his lips moving in silent prayer. The villagers' doubts. Not everyone in the village believed in Chidi's worthiness. Among those who harbored doubts was Easy, a young man with ambitions of his own. Ezi had once been considered for the ritual, but his arrogance had cost him the favor of the elders. Now, watching Chidi stand in the place he believed was rightfully his, anger simmered in his chest. Eze leans toward his friend, Obina, a stout man with a cautious expression. He speaks in a low, hushed voice. Eze, sneering, look at him. He's trembling like a leaf in the wind. How can he be the one chosen by the gods? Obina glances at Eze, his brow furrowed in worry. Obina, cautiously, he has come this far, Easy. Perhaps the gods see something in him that we do not. Eze scoffs, his arms tightening across his chest. Eze, bitterly. Or perhaps they are blind. I should be the one up there, not him. Obina looks away, his face tense as he watches Chidi. Obina, the gods will decide. It is not for us to question. Eze's jaw tightens, but he says nothing more. His eyes remain fixed on Chidi, his scowl deepening as the serpent continues to circle him. The serpent's decision. The serpent's gaze held Chidi in place, its unblinking eyes seeming to pierce his very soul. The villagers watched in silence, their breaths held as they waited for the god's verdict. Chidi knew that one wrong move could mean his end, but he also knew that this was not just a test of his body, it was a test of his spirit. Ijoma steps forward, her voice ringing out through the clearing. Ijoma, the gods watch closely, Chidi. Do not let fear cloud your heart. Only those with pure intentions can survive the dance of the serpent. Chidi closes his eyes for a moment, exhaling deeply. When he opens them again, there is a newfound resolve in his gaze. Chidi, whispering, I am ready. The serpent pauses, its head tilted as if assessing him. Then, slowly, it uncoils from around his legs and slithers back to the altar, where it rests once more at its base. A collective sigh of relief washes over the villagers, but Ijoma's expression remains unreadable. Chidi breathes a sigh of relief, his shoulders sagging slightly, but Ijoma's voice cuts through the air again. Ijoma, sharply, the serpent has chosen to spare you, but the dance is not yet complete. Chidi stiffens, his eyes widening in confusion. Chidi, what more is there to do? Ijoma smiles coldly, her eyes glinting in the firelight. Ijoma, you have passed the first test, but now you must face the second, the test of truth. Only those who carry no deceit in their hearts can continue the dance. The test of truth. The second test was the one feared most by those who came before. It was said that no one could hide their secrets from the gods, and those who tried would be struck down by the spirits. Chidi had always carried a heavy burden in his heart, one he had never spoken of, not even to his mother. Now, as Ijoma prepared for the test of truth, he wondered if he would survive what was to come. Nena steps forward, her voice filled with concern. Nena, urgently, what is this test of truth, Ijoma? What are you asking of my son? Ijoma turns to her, her eyes cold and emotionless. Ijoma, the gods see all, Nena. If your son carries any lies in his heart, they will reveal themselves now. Nena's heart sinks, and she looks at Chidi, her voice trembling slightly. Nena, pleading, Chidi, my son, be strong. Whatever happens, know that I am with you. Chidi swallows hard, his eyes meeting his mother's. He feels the weight of her words and nods, though inside, fear coils like a serpent within him. The secrets unveiled. The test of truth was said to be the most dangerous part of the ritual. Those who carried darkness in their hearts could not hide it from the gods. As Ijoma began to chant, the air around the clearing seemed to thicken, and the villagers shifted uneasily. They knew that secrets, once revealed, could tear apart even the strongest of families. Ijoma's voice rings out in the gathering dusk, each word carrying the weight of the ancient incantations. Ijoma. Spirits of the ancestors, spirits of the earth, unveil the truth that lies hidden in this boy's heart. Let the gods judge his worth. Chidi's breathing becomes shallow as he feels the invisible weight of the ritual pressing down on him. He struggles to remain calm, but his heart pounds in his chest. Chidi, muttering to himself, I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to fear. Nena steps forward, her hand outstretched toward her son, but Ijoma gives her a sharp glance, stopping her in her tracks. Ijoma, no interference, Nena. The gods will judge him alone. Nena clenches her fists at her sides, biting her lip as she watches helplessly. Chidi, feeling her gaze, steels himself, though inside, his mind races with thoughts of what the gods might uncover. Suddenly, the wind picks up, swirling around Chidi in a vortex of leaves and dust. His eyes widen as he feels the energy shift, as though something unseen is watching him closely. A dark secret. As the wind grew stronger, the gods began their work. Chidi felt a strange pull in his chest, as if something deep inside him was being torn open. His mind raced, memories flooding to the surface, memories he had long buried. And then, like a flash of lightning, the secret he had carried for so long came rushing back to him. Chidi stumbles forward, his breathing erratic as he clutches his chest. His voice shakes as he speaks. Chidi, whispering, No, not this. Please, not this. Nena steps forward again, her face filled with fear. Nena, desperately. Chidi, what is it? What are you hiding? Chidi shakes his head, his eyes filled with panic. Chidi, pleading. I can't tell you. Ijoma's voice rises above the wind, calm yet commanding. Ijoma, the gods will reveal what you cannot, Chidi. The truth cannot be hidden from them. Chidi falls to his knees, his hands gripping the dirt beneath him, as if trying to ground himself. The villagers murmur among themselves, their voices filled with suspicion and doubt. Obinna, whispering to Easy, "What do you think he's hiding? He looks terrified." Easy smirks, his eyes cold. Easy, sneering, "Whatever it is, it will be his undoing. Mark my words." The revelation. In that moment, the truth that Chidi had tried so hard to bury rose to the surface. The gods had seen it all, the secret he had carried for years, the shame that had eaten away at his soul. It was a secret that could destroy not just him, but his family as well. And now, there was no escaping it. Chidi's voice breaks as he finally speaks, his words barely audible over the wind. Chidi, brokenly, I caused Papa's death." Nena's face pales, her eyes widening in shock. The villagers gasp, their murmurs growing louder as they process Chidi's words. Nena, in disbelief. What did you say?" Chidi looks up at his mother, his face twisted with guilt and pain. Chidi, crying. "It was my fault, Mama. I was the one who told Papa to go to the river that day. I didn't know the waters were cursed. I didn't know—" Nena stumbles backward, her staff slipping from her grasp as her face contorts in grief. Nena, whispering, "No, it can't be." The villagers exchange shocked glances, their voices rising in a wave of whispers. Obinna, to Ease. "This is unbelievable." Easy's smirk fades, replaced by a look of satisfaction. Easy, darkly. "I knew it. He was never worthy." Ijoma's voice cuts through the commotion, her tone calm yet filled with authority. Ijoma, the truth has been revealed. The gods have judged you, Chidi. Chidi lowers his head, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The weight of his guilt is overwhelming, and he can feel the eyes of the entire village on him. The consequences. The weight of Chidi's confession hung heavy in the air. The villagers, once filled with hope and anticipation, now looked upon him with a mixture of pity and disdain. His mother, Nena, stood frozen in place, her heart shattered by the revelation. But the worst was yet to come. Ijoma steps forward, her voice calm but cold. Ijoma, the gods have spoken, Chidi. You have carried this guilt for too long, but now that the truth is out, the question remains, what will you do with it? Chidi looks up at her, his face streaked with tears. Chidi, broken. What can I do? I've destroyed everything. Nena, her voice shaky but firm, finally speaks. Nena, softly. No, my son, you have not destroyed everything. There is still time to make amends, if the gods allow it. Ijoma's eyes flash with interest, and she turns to Nena. Ijoma, do you seek the mercy of the gods for your son, Nena? Nena's voice is filled with determination, despite her grief. Nena, I do. I will do whatever it takes to save him. Ijoma smiles slightly, a glint of something unreadable in her eyes. Ijoma, then the gods will require a sacrifice. The price of redemption. The weight of Ijoma's words hung in the air. A sacrifice. The gods demanded something more than truth, something to balance the scales. Nena knew the rituals well enough to understand the gravity of the situation, but she had never thought it would come to this. Her son's fate now rested in her hands, and the price of his redemption could be more than she could bear. Nena, her voice trembling but resolute, steps forward, her eyes fixed on Ijoma. Nena, firmly, what sacrifice do the gods demand, Ijoma? Tell me, and I will offer it. Ijoma smiles faintly, her expression unreadable. Ijoma, softly, the gods are not so easily satisfied, Nena. They demand something of great value, something that can only be given with a pure heart. Chidi, still kneeling, looks up in desperation, his voice cracking with emotion. Chidi, pleading, Mama, no, please, don't do this. I deserve the punishment, not you. Nena's face tightens as she kneels beside her son, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Nena, whispering, "Hush, my son. You are my blood, and I will do what must be done to save you." Chidi lowers his head, his tears falling silently onto the earth. Chidi, brokenly, "But at what cost? What if the gods demand too much?" Nena's eyes flicker with pain, but her voice remains steady. "Nena, whatever the cost, I will pay it." Ezzy's hidden ambitions. While Nena grappled with the decision of what to offer, Ezzy's mind raced with possibilities. For years, he had harbored resentment toward Chidi and his family, feeling robbed of the honor that should have been his. Now, as the drama unfolded before him, Ezzy saw an opportunity, a chance to seize the power that had long eluded him. But he would have to act carefully, for one misstep could bring the wrath of the gods upon him as well. Ez leans closer to Obinna, his voice low and measured. Ezzy, whispering, "This is our moment, Obinna. If Nena falters, I will step forward. The gods will see me as the true leader." Obinna looks at Ezzy with wide eyes, his voice a mix of fear and confusion. Obinna, anxiously, "What are you saying, Ezzy? You can't interfere with the gods' will." Ezzy's lips curl into a slight smirk, his eyes gleaming with determination. Ezzy, confidently, "The gods do not choose the weak, Obinna. If Chidi is found unworthy, I will prove myself to be the one who should lead this village. Mark my words." Obinna swallows hard, his face pale as he looks nervously toward the altar. Obinna, whispering, "Be careful, Ezzy. The gods are watching closely." Ezzy's smirk fades as he glances toward Ijoma, who stands like a sentinel beside the altar. His ambition is clear, but he knows the risks all too well. The demand of the gods. The gods did not answer lightly. Their demands were always great, their power always undeniable. As Ijoma stood before the altar, her voice rising and falling in rhythmic incantation, the air around them grew heavy. The serpent, still coiled and watching, seemed to pulse with the energy of the ritual. And then, as if from the earth itself, the voice of the gods came, quiet, yet unmistakable. Ijoma's eyes narrow as the message becomes clear. She lowers her hands slowly, her voice steady as she speaks. Ijoma, solemnly, "The gods have spoken." Nena's breath catches in her throat, her eyes fixed on Ijoma. Nena, urgently, "What do they demand?" Ijoma's gaze shifts to Chidi, her expression cold and calculating. Ijoma, "A life must be given in exchange for Chidi's redemption. The gods demand the ultimate sacrifice." Nena's face pales, her eyes widening in horror. Nena, whispering, "A life? Whose life?" Ijoma's eyes flicker toward Nena, her voice soft but filled with weight. Ijoma, "The life of someone close to him, someone who carries his blood." Chidi's heart sinks as he understands the gravity of the situation. He looks up at his mother, his face filled with anguish. Chidi, desperately, "No, Mama, no." Nena's expression hardens, though her eyes are filled with pain. Nena, softly, "I will do it. I will give my life for my son." The villagers gasp in shock and whispers ripple through the crowd as Nena steps forward, her resolve clear. The village's reaction. The villagers had known Nena as a woman of strength and wisdom, but no one had expected her to make such a sacrifice. As the reality of her words sank in, the crowd began to murmur, their whispers filled with fear and disbelief. For a mother to give her life for her child was the ultimate act of love, but it was also the ultimate tragedy. And yet, the god's will could not be denied. Obinna, his voice trembling, leans toward Ezzy, his eyes wide with fear. Obinna, whispering, "Is she really going to do it? She's going to sacrifice herself?" Ezzy's expression remains cold, though a flicker of something dark passes through his eyes. Ezzy, softly, She is a fool if she thinks the gods will accept her offer so easily. Obina glances nervously at Easy, his voice shaking. Obina, you're not planning to interfere, are you? Easy's smirk returns, though his eyes remain fixed on Nena. Ezzy, let her try, but when the gods reject her sacrifice, I will be there to take what is mine. The final plea. Nena's heart ached with the weight of her decision, but she knew there was no other way. Her son's life hung in the balance, and the gods would not be denied. She stepped forward, ready to offer herself in his place. But deep in her heart, a seed of doubt had been planted. Would the gods truly accept her sacrifice? Or was there more at play than she could see? Nena's voice is steady as she speaks to Ijoma. Nena, firmly, I am ready. Tell the gods I will give my life for my sons. Ijoma's expression remains calm, though her eyes glint with something unreadable. Ijoma, softly. The gods will decide if your offer is worthy, Nena. But be warned, there are forces beyond your understanding at work here. Nena meets Ijioma's gaze, her voice filled with quiet resolve. Nena, I understand. I only ask that my son be spared. Chidi, his voice trembling, reaches out toward his mother. Chidi, desperately. Mama, please, don't do this. Nena's eyes soften as she looks at her son, her voice gentle but firm. Nena, it is my duty, my son. You are my world. Ijoma steps forward, her voice cold and measured. Ijoma, the gods will have their answer soon. The moment of judgment. The air around the altar felt thick and heavy, as though the very atmosphere had grown dense with the weight of the gods' presence. Nena's heart raced in her chest, her thoughts swirling with memories of Chidi's childhood, of the sacrifices she had made for him, and the lengths she would go to save him. She stepped forward, each footfall deliberate, her gaze never wavering from Ijoma's cold, distant eyes. The moment of judgment had come. Ijoma raises her hands to the sky, her voice calm and commanding. Ijoma, solemnly, spirits of the ancestors, spirits of the earth and sky, hear this mother's plea. She offers her life in exchange for her son's redemption. Will you accept this sacrifice, or is there more to be revealed? Nena's breath hitches as she stands tall, waiting for the god's response. Chidi, still on his knees, cries out to her, his voice breaking. Chidi, desperately, Mama, no, please don't do this. I beg you. Nena's gaze softens, but she does not turn to face her son. Her voice is steady, though filled with a quiet sadness. Nena, gently. My son, it is the only way. I must do this, for you. The villagers murmur among themselves, their whispers growing louder as the tension thickens. Eze, standing near the edge of the crowd, watches closely, his expression cold and calculating. He knows this is a crucial moment, one that could change everything. Easy. To Obina, whispering, if the gods reject her sacrifice, the village will look to me. This is my chance, Obina. Obina, his face pale and anxious, glances nervously at Ize. Obina, whispering, what if the gods don't reject her? What if they take her life instead? Easy smirks, his eyes dark with ambition. Easy, softly. Then I will still win. The village will be leaderless. They will need someone strong to guide them. The Serpent's warning. The serpent moved with a slow, purposeful grace, its gaze now fixed solely on Nena. The villagers whispered in hushed tones, for the serpent's movement was never without meaning. In the ancient tales, the serpent was the ultimate judge, a living embodiment of the god's will. If it accepted the sacrifice, Nena would be taken. If it rejected it, the consequences could be far worse. Chidi, his voice filled with panic, cries out as he watches the serpent approach his mother. Chidi, frantically, Mama, the serpent, it's coming for you. Nena turns her head slightly, her expression calm, though her voice trembles with emotion. Nena, I know, my son, It is the god's will. The serpent pauses just inches from Nena, its head lifting to her chest height. It sways slightly, as if waiting for something. Ijoma opens her eyes, her voice low and filled with power. Ijoma, the serpent is the voice of the gods. If it strikes, the sacrifice will be accepted. Nena closes her eyes, bracing herself for whatever may come, her breath steady but deep. Chidi, unable to contain his fear any longer, rushes forward, his hands reaching for his mother. Chidi, desperately. No, please, take me instead. I'm the one who's guilty, not her. Nena's eyes fly open as she gasps, her voice sharp. Nena, firmly. Chidi, no, stay back. Ijioma's eyes narrow as she steps toward Chidi, her voice filled with warning. Ijioma, you dare interfere with the will of the gods, boy? Stand down or risk angering them further. The serpent, sensing the disturbance, hisses softly, its body tensing as it watches the scene unfold. The tension between the three figures, Chidi, Nena, and Ijoma, is electric, and the entire village holds its breath. A choice. Chidi's heart raced as he stood just feet from his mother, the weight of his guilt crashing down on him like a wave. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, of watching her give her life for his mistakes. Yet, the power of the gods was undeniable. The serpent watched them all, waiting for its moment to act. A choice had to be made, but who would make it? Nena's voice breaks the silence, her tone soft but filled with finality. Nena, gently. Chidi, listen to me. You are my son and I love you, but you cannot change the god's will. I must do this. Chidi shakes his head, tears streaming down his face. Chidi, crying. No, Mama, you've done enough for me. It's my turn to make it right. Let me be the one. Nena steps forward, her hand gently touching Chidi's cheek. Her voice is barely above a whisper. Nena, softly. You are still so young, my son. You have a life ahead of you. Do not take it for granted. Ijoma watches them closely, her voice cutting through the emotional moment. Ijoma, the gods demand a life, but the choice of who to give is not yours to make. Only the gods can decide. Suddenly, the serpent moves again, its head lowering to the ground before Chidi, its eyes locking onto his. Chidi feels a strange pull, as if the serpent is waiting for him to act. Ijoma steps forward, her voice filled with authority. Ijoma, the serpent sees you, Chidi. It recognizes your plea. Nena's eyes widen, and she reaches for her son's arm, her voice trembling. Nena, fearfully. Chidi, don't. Chidi takes a deep breath, his gaze never leaving the serpent's eyes. Chidi, resolutely. I will give my life. Let me be the one. The villagers gasp, their whispers growing louder as they process Chidi's words. Nena clutches her son's arm, tears streaming down her face. The gods respond. The moment had come. The serpent, its eyes glowing with the light of the gods, prepared to deliver its judgment. The villagers, frozen in place, could only watch as the fate of both mother and son hung in the balance. Chidi stood tall, ready to give his life, while Nena's heart ached with the knowledge that she might lose him forever. But the gods were never predictable, and the serpent's decision could change everything. Ijoma's voice is soft but commanding as she addresses the serpent. Ijoma, calmly. Spirits of the ancestors, spirits of the earth and sky, the boy has made his choice. Will you accept it? The serpent hisses softly, its body coiling once more. Then, in a sudden motion, it strikes, but not at Chidi. The villagers gasp as the serpent's head snaps toward the altar, its fangs sinking into the stone. A brilliant light erupts from the altar, blinding everyone for a moment. Nena screams, pulling Chidi into her arms as the light grows brighter, enveloping them both. The blinding light. The light was blinding, almost unbearable. It pulsed with a strange, otherworldly energy that seemed to reach deep into the hearts of everyone present. The villagers, once eager to see the gods, were revealed, now trembled in fear. The serpent remained coiled, a guardian of ancient power, while Chidi and Nena clung to each other, their fates intertwined. In the silence that followed, all eyes turned to the altar, waiting for the gods to speak. Chidi, his voice barely a whisper, trembles in his mother's embrace. Chidi, fearfully, "Mama, what's happening? Why is the light so bright?" Nena, her arms wrapped protectively around him, whispers back, her voice filled with equal parts fear and awe. Nena, softly, "I don't know, my son, but whatever it is, the gods are with us." The villagers murmur amongst themselves, their faces filled with a mixture of awe and terror. Ezi, standing at the back of the crowd, watches with narrowed eyes, his hands clenched into fists. His face betrays a flicker of doubt as the light grows stronger. Ezi, to himself, angrily, "This wasn't supposed to happen." Obina, standing beside Ezi, steps back in fear, his voice shaking. Obina, nervously, "Easy. What if this is a sign? Maybe we shouldn't interfere." Easy's face hardens, his ambition flickering beneath the surface. Eze, coldly, "It's a test, Obina. Nothing more. The gods are waiting for someone strong enough to seize power." The voice of the ancestors. The light began to dim, but in its place, something far more mysterious emerged. An ancient spirit, an ancestor long forgotten, stood above the altar. Its form was barely visible, like a mist that shifted with the wind, but its eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 generations. The villagers fell silent, their whispers of doubt and fear replaced by reverence. This was the voice of the ancestors, the final judgment of the gods. The spirit's voice is deep and resonant, echoing through the clearing as it speaks with an ancient authority. Spirit, calmly, the blood of the innocent calls to us. The time has come for justice to be delivered. But justice requires balance, and balance requires sacrifice. Nena's breath catches in her throat, her voice trembling as she speaks to the spirit. Nena, softly, "I will give my life if that is what the gods demand." The spirit's glowing eyes turn toward Nena, its voice filled with wisdom and sadness. "Spirit, your heart is pure, Nena. But the gods do not seek your life. They seek truth, and it is truth that will save your son." Chidi's eyes widen in confusion, his voice shaky as he speaks. Chidi, nervously, "Truth? What truth? I've already confessed. I've already told you everything." The spirit's gaze shifts to Chidi, its voice calm but firm. "Spirit, there is a truth deeper than guilt, Chidi. It is not your confession that we seek, but the truth of your heart. Do you truly believe you deserve to be forgiven?" Chidi's face falls as the weight of the question settles over him. He lowers his head, unable to meet the spirit's gaze. Chidi, whispering, "I don't know. I don't think I do. I've caused so much pain." Nena tightens her grip on her son's hand, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "Nena, you must forgive yourself, my son. Only then will the gods grant you peace." The spirit nods slowly, its voice echoing through the clearing once more. "Spirit, only through forgiveness will the serpent release its grip. The dance is not one of punishment, but of redemption. If you can forgive yourself, the gods will too." Chidi's choice. The spirit's words echoed in Chidi's mind, each one striking deep into his heart. He had spent years carrying the weight of his guilt, and now, standing before the serpent, he realized that the only thing holding him back was himself. His mother had forgiven him, the village had forgiven him. But could he forgive himself? That was the true test, the final step in the dance. Chidi closes his eyes, taking a deep breath as he speaks quietly to himself. "Chidi," softly, I want to forgive myself." He opens his eyes, looking up at the spirit, his voice growing stronger. "Chidi, I don't know if I can, but I want to try." Nena steps forward, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Nena, gently. That is all the gods ask of you, my son. To try. Chidi takes another deep breath, his hands trembling as he looks at the serpent. Slowly he steps forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Chidi, firmly. I forgive myself. I will not let my guilt define me anymore. The serpent's body begins to relax, its coils loosening as it watches Chidi closely. The villagers murmur softly, their eyes wide with anticipation. Ijoma, standing near the altar, nods approvingly, a faint smile on her lips. Ijoma, quietly. The gods are pleased. The serpent's release. The serpent, having completed its role, slowly withdrew, its once tense body now relaxed and calm. Chidi's heart raced, but this time it was not from fear. It was from the realization that the gods had heard him, that he had passed the test. The dance of the serpent was not just about the gods' judgment. It was about Chidi's journey toward forgiveness and redemption. Chidi looks up at his mother, his voice filled with gratitude. Chidi, softly, Mama, thank you. I couldn't have done this without you. Nena smiles, her eyes brimming with tears as she pulls him into a gentle embrace. Nena, tearfully, you did this on your own, my son. The gods have seen your heart. Ijoma steps forward, her voice calm but authoritative as she addresses the village. Ijoma, the gods have spoken. The serpent has released its hold. Chidi has found redemption, and the village has been spared. The villagers cheer softly, their faces filled with relief and joy. Ezi, standing at the back, watches with a cold expression, his ambitions momentarily dashed. But even as the celebrations begin, his mind is already turning to the next opportunity. Shadows of discontent. The village may have been spared, and Chidi may have found redemption, but not everyone was satisfied. In the shadows, ambition still simmered. Ezi, who had once believed himself destined for greatness, now saw his chance slipping away. The serpent may have spared Chidi, but Ezi knew that the gods' favor was fickle. There would be another chance, another moment when power could be seized, and this time he would be ready. Chidi looks at the villagers as they leave, a faint smile of relief on his face, though his body still trembles with the weight of the ritual. Nena stands beside him, her voice soft, but filled with pride. Nena, gently. You did it, my son. You faced the gods and found your strength. Chidi exhales deeply, his eyes still fixed on the retreating crowd. Chidi, softly. I never thought I'd survive. Nena squeezes his shoulder, her voice warm. Nena, the gods saw your heart, Chidi. That's what saved you. Ijoma, her presence still commanding, approaches them. Her voice is calm, but filled with authority. Ijoma, the gods have granted you mercy, Chidi, but mercy is not a permanent gift. It must be earned every day. The serpent may have released you, but your journey is not over. Chidi turns to her, confusion flickering in his eyes. Chidi, nervously. What do you mean? Ijoma's eyes narrow slightly, her tone sharp. Ijoma, there are forces in this village that would see you fall again. Be vigilant, for the gods are always watching. Nena glances at Ijoma, her brow furrowing. Nena, what forces? What are you speaking of? Ijoma's gaze shifts to the edge of the clearing, where Ize lingers, his figure barely visible in the morning light. Her voice drops to a near whisper. Ijoma, there are those who covet power and will stop at nothing to claim it. Ezi's quiet fury. Iz had never been one to accept defeat. Watching Chidi and Nena bask in the glory of survival ignited a fire deep within him. The gods may have spared Chidi today, but Eze knew how to bend fate. He had seen men rise and fall, not because of divine intervention, but because of the decisions they made and the manipulations of others. Chidi's redemption was temporary. Power could be reclaimed if one knew how to play the game. Obina approaches Ize carefully, his voice low and filled with hesitation. Obina, nervously. Easy. Maybe it's time to let it go. The gods have spoken. Easy's expression hardens as he turns to Obina, his voice sharp and cutting. Easy. Coldly. The gods may have spoken, but they can be swayed. This isn't over, Obina. Obina glances nervously at the clearing where Chidi and Nena stand, his voice trembling slightly. Obina, anxiously. You saw the serpent, Easy. It accepted Chidi. If you go against him now, you'll be going against the gods. Easy's eyes flash with anger, his fists clenching at his sides. Easy, bitterly. The serpent is a tool, nothing more. Ijoma wields the power here, and if I can't gain the gods' favor, then I will find another way to claim what's mine. Obina looks at Ezi in alarm, his voice urgent. Obina, what are you planning? You can't just... Ezi cuts him off, his voice dangerously low. Ezi, I'll do whatever it takes, Obina. Chidi isn't the rightful heir to this village. I am, and I will make sure everyone knows it. A village divided. The village had survived the serpent's judgment, but the ordeal had left cracks beneath the surface. Whispers of doubt and suspicion lingered in the air, as if the gods' favor could shift at any moment. Some villagers saw Chidi as a symbol of redemption, a beacon of hope. Others, however, whispered in the shadows, questioning whether the gods' judgment had truly been final. Easy's presence only deepened the division. Though he had not openly challenged Chidi, his influence spread like wildfire through the village, quietly stoking the flames of discontent. A group of villagers, gathered near a small well, whisper among themselves. One of them, a woman named Amaka, speaks in a hushed but urgent tone. Amaka, whispering, I'm not so sure the gods are finished with us. That light, the serpent, it was too much. Something's still wrong. Another villager, an older man named Uche, nods in agreement, his voice low and cautious. Uche, seriously, I've never seen the serpent act that way before. It's as if it was waiting for something. I'm not convinced Chidi's safe yet. A younger villager, Nkem, shakes her head, her voice filled with conviction. Nkem, the gods accepted him. We saw it with our own eyes, but we must be careful. There are those who wish to see him fall. Amaka glances nervously over her shoulder, her voice dropping even lower. Amaka, you mean Easy, don't you? He's not going to let this go. Uchi frowns, his expression grim. Uchi, Easy won't stop until he's taken what he believes is his, and the village may suffer for it. Easy's next move. Easy's mind raced with thoughts of power and revenge. The gods may have chosen Chidi, but Easy believed in his heart that the gods could be manipulated, or even ignored. There were other ways to claim what he believed was rightfully his. He had seen leaders fall, not because of divine judgment, but because of fear, manipulation, and division. And now, with the village teetering on the edge of uncertainty, Ezi knew his time was coming. Obina, his voice filled with hesitation, approaches Easy carefully. Obina, nervously. Easy, what are you going to do? The village is already divided. If you push any further, there could be chaos. Easy smirks, his eyes never leaving Chidi's figure in the distance. Easy, coldly. Chaos is exactly what we need, Obina. It's only in chaos that power changes hands. Obina's eyes widen in fear, his voice trembling. Obina, but the gods... Easy cuts him off, his voice sharp. Easy, the gods can't protect Chidi forever, and when they turn their backs, I'll be waiting. The gathering storm. The air in the village was thick with unease. Word of Easy's growing faction had spread quickly, and now, as the sun began to set, the villagers felt the weight of impending conflict. Chidi and Nena could sense it, the calm before the storm. The gods had spared Chidi once, but Easy's ambitions threatened to unravel everything. The village was divided, and as tensions rose, so too did the stakes. This would be a test, not of divine favor, but of the strength of the village itself. Chidi, his face tight with worry, turns to Nena, his voice low. Chidi, anxiously. Mama, I don't understand. Why can't Easy just let this go? The gods have spoken. Nena places a comforting hand on his shoulder, though her face is filled with concern. Nena, softly. Some men are never satisfied, my son. Easy believes power belongs to him, and he will do anything to claim it. Ijoma approaches, her voice calm but serious. Ijoma, the gods have granted you mercy, Chidi, but Easy does not fear the gods. He will try to divide the village, to turn them against you. Chidi clenches his fists, his voice filled with frustration. Chidi, what can I do? How do I stop him? Ijoma's eyes narrow slightly, her voice filled with quiet wisdom. Ijoma, you do not fight fire with fire. If you meet his anger with violence, you will lose. But if you meet him with truth and humility, the village will see who the true leader is. Confrontation at the altar. The village had come to a crossroads. On one side stood Chidi, a symbol of forgiveness and redemption, chosen by the gods. On the other side, Eze, whose ambition had blinded him to anything but his thirst for power. The villagers caught in the middle, watched in silence, unsure of who to follow. This confrontation would decide not just the fate of Chidi and Eze, but the future of the entire village. Eze steps forward, his voice loud and commanding as he addresses the crowd. Eze, sharply, the gods may have spared Chidi, but that does not make him our leader. He is weak, unworthy to guide this village. The villagers murmur among themselves, their faces filled with uncertainty. Chidi steps forward, his voice quiet but firm. Chidi, calmly, I don't claim to be perfect, Easy. I have made mistakes, and I have sought forgiveness, but the gods chose to give me a second chance. This village is not about one man's ambition, it's about all of us. Eze scoffs, his eyes flashing with anger. Eze, bitterly, you speak of forgiveness, but forgiveness does not lead. Strength does. Power does. Nena steps forward, her voice filled with calm wisdom. Nena, power without wisdom is nothing, Easy. You seek to divide this village because you believe power belongs to you. But true power comes from unity, from love and forgiveness. Eze's face hardens, his voice sharp as he turns to the villagers. Eze, is this the kind of leader you want? Someone who is weak and relies on the mercy of the gods? Ijoma steps forward, her voice quiet but filled with authority. Ijoma, the gods do not grant mercy to the weak, Easy. They grant it to the humble. If you cannot understand that, then you are not fit to lead. The final test. The final test was not one of strength, but of character. The village stood on the edge of a precipice, and the decisions made in this moment would shape its future. Chidi had been tested by the gods, but now he would be tested by his own people. Would they follow the path of unity and forgiveness, or would they fall into division and ambition? Easy, his voice filled with anger and frustration, raises his hand pointing toward Chidi. Easy, furiously. Chidi is not fit to lead this village. He has already failed once and he will fail again. You deserve better. Chidi steps forward, his voice calm but filled with conviction. Chidi, softly, I don't want to lead this village through fear or force. I only want to lead with love and truth. If the village believes that I am unworthy, then I will step aside. But if you believe in forgiveness, in second chances, then I ask that we stand together. The villagers exchange uncertain glances, torn between Easy's fiery words and Chidi's quiet strength. Nena's voice cuts through the tension, filled with love and wisdom. Nena, this village has been through enough. We cannot afford to be divided. The gods have shown us the path, love, forgiveness, and unity. That is where our strength lies. The villagers begin to murmur, their faces filled with uncertainty, but also a glimmer of hope. Easy's face twists with frustration as he realizes his grip on the crowd is slipping. The Serpent's verdict. The serpent, silent until now, moved with deliberate grace. Its presence was undeniable, a reminder of the gods' power and their watchful eyes. As the villagers watched in awe, the serpent made its way between Chidi and Easy, its movements slow and purposeful. The gods had chosen once before, and now they would choose again. Easy takes a step back, his eyes wide with shock as the serpent approaches. Chidi remains still, his face calm but tense. Ijoma's voice is soft, but filled with authority. Ijoma, the gods are watching, Easy. This is your final chance to turn back. Izzy's face hardens as he clenches his fists, his voice filled with defiance. Izzy, bitterly, I will not be judged by a serpent. The serpent pauses before Chidi, its eyes locking onto his. For a moment, the entire village holds its breath. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, the serpent bows its head before Chidi, its acceptance clear. The villagers gasp, their voices rising in awe. Easy, his face pale with rage, steps back, shaking his head in disbelief. Easy, furiously, no, this can't be. Chidi, his voice soft but filled with quiet strength, addresses the village. Chidi, the gods have spoken, but we must choose how we live. Will we stand together as one village, or will we let ambition tear us apart? The lesson. Learned. In the end, the village chose unity. Chidi's strength had not come from power or force, but from love, humility, and the ability to forgive. Easy's ambitions, built on a foundation of division and greed, had crumbled under the weight of the gods' judgment. The serpent had shown them the path, but it was up to the village to walk it. Moral lesson. True strength lies not in ambition or power, but in love, humility, and forgiveness. Those who seek to lead with force and division will always find themselves alone, while those who lead with kindness and wisdom will be followed by many. In the end, it is unity that brings true peace, and the ability to forgive both others and oneself that leads to redemption. Thank you for watching The Serpent's Dance, a chronicle of the snake worship rituals. We hope you enjoyed this powerful tale of love, unity, and redemption. If you found this story compelling, please share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the African Voice TAV channel for more amazing content. And make sure to click that notification bell so you're always the first to know when we upload a new video. Until next time, keep the spirit of storytelling alive.